Hi, I'm Larry Levin, and welcome to another edition of Kop Talk. Here with me is Editor-in-Chief Emeritus of the Jewish Light, Bob Cohn. You can see I'm fully regaled in St. Louis Cardinal garb today. We're celebrating another season of the St. Louis Cardinals.
Looks terrific, and please bring home a winner.
Thank you, and also wearing my Mogen David Adom, which is the hat, which is the Israeli Red Cross.
A dome on your dome.
A dome on my dome. Let's talk about news of this week. So, big news this week was that South African Judge Richard Goldstone, who led the creation of the UN report about Israel's operation in Gaza in 2008 and 2009, wrote an op-ed last week, I believe, or in the Washington Post, and he claimed now that he had reviewed the results of Israel's internal investigation, he sees there was no objective of targeting civilians in Gaza. What do you make of the story? And also, I'm curious what you think about whether Israel, looking backward, hurt itself by not cooperating initially.
Well, they might have done some damage to themselves by not more fully cooperating openly originally, but one can hardly blame them because at the time Libya was the chair of the Human Rights Council.
Right.
It was also commendable of Judge Goldstone to do at least a partial mea culpa in the Washington Post, but as others have pointed out, including Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, he needs to formally ask the UN to withdraw it, just like they did with the Zionism versus racism resolution.
Right. Let's stick with Goldstone for a minute. So some on the left who support Israel but don't always support Israel's policies, like Michael Lerner of the magazine Cohn, thought Goldstone was a hero for his involvement in the UN report. What do you think is likely to happen now on the left with respect to those Jews who had lined up with Goldstone?
Well, you drafted a wonderful editorial in which, and I supported you fully in defending Lerner against having his house vandalized. It was completely inappropriate, but also disagreeing with the deservedness of Goldstone. Now, I think Lerner should, modify or issue some kind of a statement or publish some kind. I'm not going to hold my breath for it.
Right.
It was interesting. Mahmoud Abbas initially dissed the Goldstone report, and he was jumped upon by more radical elements among the Arabs, and then they wanted to use it as a club over which to hit Israel over and over again. So certainly it's welcome that he retracted it, but he needs to go much farther.
Let's switch from Goldstone to other Middle East news. We can safely say now I think the Middle East looks like a well-used dartboard. And we've recently seen President Obama's administration use what I'd call aggressive restraint in its approach to Libya, namely support to be part of the team, but let somebody else lead, don't provide ground troops. Good idea, bad idea? What do you think about the American approach?
Well, it would have been a good idea if it had worked out well.
Right.
But now the opposition is complaining that ever since NATO took over from the direct rule by the United States, that there's as much as an 8-hour lag between the time they call for air support and the actual response. So something needs to be speeded up in that regard.
But is that something we have to be responsible for? I mean, that's one of the complaints, is that whenever something goes wrong in an international effort, the U.S. is expected to step in and fix it.
No, I think the French and the British should, who were more aggressive at the beginning, should take over that aggressive response.
So this last Sunday on Meet the Press, which I guess will be about a week after people are looking at this, one of the guests pointed out that those who are trying to discern an Obama doctrine of sorts are missing the point, namely that Obama is a very highly pragmatic leader and that his policies about intervention are going to be carefully tailored to whatever the particular debacle du jour is. What do you think about that?
Well, I heard someone say that he doesn't have a doctorate because he is not doctrinaire. Ironically, most recently he's being compared to Dwight Eisenhower. I was having an issue-by-issue, case-by-case, very cautious approach. Now, his critics would say that he dithers and he waffles. His supporters are saying he's being very thoughtful and sizing up each situation instead of instinctively responding to each situation.
And as I think the historian Doris Kearns Goodwin said on Meet the Press, or one of the other guests may have said it, the fact that you can't intervene in everything doesn't mean you shouldn't intervene in some things when you can.
Exactly, such as a humanitarian intervention.
Exactly right. So there's this absolutely crazy pastor in Florida, Terry Jones, who's reared his head again, who orchestrated yet another Koran burning a couple weeks ago. And now over 100 of our Missouri legislators, which we wrote about in an editorial, have gone on a crusade to ban Muslim law from being used in interpreting Missouri law, which of course has never happened and there's no current risk of. And of course, signaling out any religion like that is patently unconstitutional. Where's this mean-spirited venom against Muslim coming from? Shouldn't we be worried that if it's Muslims this week, it's Jews next week?
All right, the day before yesterday was German Americans. There used to be a street called Berlin Avenue, where Elizabeth Taylor's parents lived in 1917. It changed its name to Pershing because of the tremendous xenophobic attitude towards German Americans. Mm-hmm. And so once a segment of the population is demonized, it isn't much difference from what the anti-Semites, the fascists, and the Nazis did in Europe. I don't like to make those facile comparisons, but we should not, and a lot of this is just sheer demagoguery, as you pointed out in your piece, of taking advantage of legitimate concerns about international terrorism from a segment of the Islamic community and generalizing it to the entire community.
And that's all we have time for this week. A lot going on in the world. There'll be a lot more next time we get together. So until next time, this is Larry Levin on behalf of Bob Cohn for Kop Talk. Thank you and have a great week.